Communication is my weakest skill. The knocking on the wall meant nothing. What does it mean? A knock upon the wall? A knock on the door. That makes sense. You get your feet under you and you open it. Opening a wall isn't so safe, and it's better, if you're sitting down for this, how I ended up holding a sledgehammer in my scrawny arms, alone, smashing through the drywall between apartments. That's just how it started. I can't possibly explain what I am doing right now without saying why, without telling you from the beginning. Perhaps if I were a better communicator, less of a loner, smarter, stronger, braver, things would be different. What would you have done facing the same thing? Would you have survived to do what I am doing? I'll let you be the judge of that. After moving into my new apartment, I immediately began to unpack. That's the best way to do it. Take everything out of the boxes away, otherwise you'll get tired and put off unpacking those last few boxes indefinitely. Don't want to end up buried under boxes of hoarded clutter. Not a hoarder? That's like saying not an opioid addict. Status can change, and you'd be surprised how weak you actually are when your instincts start bullying you. My opioid addiction was cured, but I was still alone, ditched by all the decent people in my life who were suddenly missing when it became obvious I had a problem. I wasn't sure if what I was seeing was real at first. I have seen things, my strained mind inventing artifacts and goblins where lamps or cats sat, or where there was nothing at all. So I looked up and saw a large, bloated fly slowly chewing its way out of the white wall, dry crumbs in its teeth and dark blot churning and buzzing. I stared, a feeling of unease slowly beginning to rise inside my gaze, like a broken moat, a blood vessel with too much paint thinner dissolving it. I put a piece of tape over it when I decided it was real. I'm not sure how I found it scarier, when it was real or when it wasn't. I felt it pushing on my thumb under the tape until it pierced through, and the sting made me withdraw my hand, seeing a little red bead on the fingertip pricking. I went to the kitchen to rinse it and heard a buzzing sound as the fly entered my apartment and flew around crazily. I felt a shudder, seeing the size and intensity of its presence. I wondered if I was having a problem, something to do with my past, and decided this was independent. No, my past serves me only to isolate me and invalidate whatever I say. I hope that if I am honest about who I am and my weaknesses, I can find myself understood. My attempts to swat it with a series of gradually upgraded objects within reach resulted in frustration and a feeling of helplessness. The fly waited until I was tired and then landed on the side of my neck and bit a hole in my skin. It hurt so bad I actually screamed and swatted at it with my hand, the rush of pain making my reflexes connect. I took my hand away, and amid the sticky red cells was the blasted remains of the fly, looking like a tangled mess of guts erupted from its nasty insect body. It twitched and stared with its compound eye, buzzing in death. I sensed its malevolence, its hatred of me. I felt loathing and disturbance, washing it down the drain. I was crying from the pain and the feeling that my new home was invaded, somehow infested, and no longer safe. Then began the knocking upon the wall. From the same wall, someone or something was knocking, no rhythm, no sense to it. Nothing I could discern, just random knocks, some as a single thump, others a series of hits. Somehow I wanted nothing to do with it. I felt cold. I felt like it was accusing me of something, like I wasn't really cured, like I am a liar and a fake. Still an addict, just better at hiding it. Just split between the me who needs to be seen and have friends and a life, and the me who needs something else entirely. I went to the far end of the studio and wrapped myself in a blanket and tried to ignore it. Each new knock sent shivers, made me feel more alone, more threatened, more exposed. When the morning came, I hadn't slept. I went downstairs and met the attendant as he went to his office. I told them about the fly, the hole in the wall, and the knocking. I was told it would be dealt with and to document the damage to the wall. Nothing changed. While I was putting away the grocery delivery, I heard more buzzing. As I looked, I saw more holes in the wall had formed, and large biting flies were burrowing into my apartment. I tried spraying them with disinfectant, but it irritated me more than them. I swatted at them impossibly, and then they found me. One by one they flew at me and tried to bite me. I fled to the bathroom and locked the door. There were no flies in my bathroom, so I felt momentarily safe. I was too terrified to go back out there. I tucked towels under the crack in the door and slept. On the floor in my bathroom, crying myself to sleep, terrorized by the swarming insects. I say swarm, but really there were only half a dozen of them out there. I hadn't seen them in large numbers yet. My dreams tried to comfort me, reminding me of my anthropology studies. She stood in the open with the Aborigines, and they told her to hold perfectly still and feel no fear. Millions of bush flies swarmed over them, coating their entire bodies. No bites, and the flies were only interested in eating the dust saturated in sweat off of their bodies. When everyone was sparkly clean, the swarm moved on. I woke up and took a shower, not to get clean, but to feel clean. Formication is the name of the sensation of having insects crawling all over your skin, and it is the worst thing to feel. I felt it when I woke up, a dirty feeling, a cold, dirty feeling. They were crawling all over my skin, and some had chewed entrances and now crawled underneath, making nests and laying eggs. That is what my body and my mind agreed upon, although I could not see anything. I've felt this way before, but not when real biting flies were in my apartment. I let the water run until it went cold. My shallow breathing made me cough and turn the cold water off. I wasn't shivering. My skin was sensitive, and the cold water had helped soothe the unpleasant crawling. Leaving. The bathroom was a moment of dread. The flies were all landed, and I managed to get my work uniform and get dressed in the bathroom. When I left, they were watching me. After work, I stopped at the store and acquired a can of Vespicide. The spray was an old-school toxin sold by a wizard, and if it could kill a murder hornet, it could kill a mutant fly. At least that is how I regarded my weapon as I rode the bus home. Before I went inside, I hesitated. The stress of the last 2 nights was getting to me, and I was afraid to go in. Armed with the spray, I made myself go in and mechanically and stiffly walked around, trembling and feeling on edge. When I saw one of the flies take off from a counter and make a beeline for me, I sprayed it. It retreated, flew in a death spiral, and then fell dead to the floor. I let out some kind of noise in relief and victory. I stood there, waiting for any more attacks, but it seemed there was just one fly who wanted to test me. I made dinner, nervous and keeping the spray close. At least I had a way to defend myself. Then, before I could eat, the knocking began. Right away, I jumped and wanted to leave, with nowhere to go. Flies arose from all over and began swarming. There were at least twice as many, if not more, than there were before. I jolted to the bathroom, spraying and praying as I went. The can ran, empty, and I felt sick from the chemicals in the air. In the bathroom, I opened the small window and turned on the fan. I stuffed towels under the door and did another night in the bathroom, crying and rocking myself while the buzzing and the knocking continued. This is how it went, for 2 weeks, and I complained about it. My sleeplessness and the mess of my place, and the stress and terror was taking a toll on me. When I asked for help, it was presumed I was having a relapse. Nobody believed what was really happening. I had no place to go. My efforts to communicate, confront the neighbor, all failed. I complained to the apartments, but they told me they were working on it. One night, freaking out, breaking down, exhausted and persecuted, I banged on the door next door. No response. So funny, I growled when the knocking returned as I went back into my own apartment. I was frequently and painfully bitten, and my home had become a battlefield. When I saw the sledgehammer leaning against the portable potty next to our apartments, I stole from the worksite, promising myself I needed it and I'd put it back when I was done. Had I lost my mind? I started going through the wall, first just making a window. Would flies come through the hole? There were already hundreds of holes they were coming through already. They were buzzing loudly as I grunted and swung and broke. Chunks of the wall were all over the place, white dust in the air. I was being bitten, and I growled and let out little shrieks of defiance. I wasn't going to live in terror anymore, I told myself, but I had no idea what I was doing. When I'd made an opening, I got my flashlight out of the drawer. It was just a black hole. and a deathly silence hummed while the monsters waited for my final break. The beam barely cut into the thick black liquid darkness, and it was leaking like a slime from the hole in the wall. The smell warned me. I heaved, and feeling that this was all there was, I widened the hole until I could physically penetrate the nightmare on the other side. My godless horror had done something to me. While I kicked and screamed in panic within my own mind, I was in autopilot, recklessly discovering what would be my undoing. All the surfaces were caked in flies, crawling in a silent dormancy. One cough, one trip, and they would alight and chew off all my skin. Slowly, nervously, hideously driven forward, I pursued the source of my awful episodes. All around were stacks of pizza boxes, bundles of newspapers, slain cockroaches, and desiccating things, resting in stale dust. The degree of garbage in the clutter was, in itself, disturbing. Why had nobody reacted to my break-in? Who had knocked upon the wall each night? Yes, I discovered who. I found them there, at first, a writhing mass of charnel. Worms in the shape of a person. I tried to throw up again, empty. What I do not understand about any of this is how someone who was dead for so long had knocked. Enjoy another story. I got a job as a night shift nurse a few months ago at the Southern Hospital. The job seemed simple. I worked in the coma patient area. I only had to keep them clean, change IVs, and check their vital signs from time to time to make sure none of them died on my shift. A dream, compared to what the poor nurses in the emergency room go through. One quit after a patient faked a seizure, preventing her from tending to a child with a severe allergy. The child didn't make it. The man who faked the seizure walked home like nothing happened. Those kinds of things happen sometimes. It was a normal, boring job if it weren't for Mrs. Esposito. She was a patient who had been in this section for over a year. I was told she'd had a domestic accident, though no one knew exactly what happened. She spent 2 days lying on the floor of her house without medical care until her son came back from a trip and found her there. The diagnosis, a traumatic brain injury that left her in a coma. Her family, like most here, rarely visits. So, in a way, I'm her only company. Over time, I realized she wasn't in a coma. Let me explain. On October 3rd, during my night rounds, I could have sworn I saw her sit up in her bed out of the corner of my eye. I even heard the bed creak. I froze. Slowly turned, but when I looked, she was as peaceful and still as ever. I thought I imagined it. Continued my rounds, nervous but relieved. A few uneventful days passed, and I assumed it was just my messed up sleep schedule. Being a lonely woman in a big city can mess with your head, but on October 10th, from the desk overlooking the patient ward, I saw her through the glass. She was standing. That shouldn't have been possible given the muscle atrophy in her legs. She stood, facing the window, looking right at me. Her sparse hair exposed her scalp, her glassy eyes, dry lips, skin white as paper. I jumped up, thinking she might have woken from the coma. I walked toward the ward, her gaze fixed on me. I opened the door. Inside, she was lying down, in a coma like always. I checked her pulse. Everything normal. When I stepped out, I looked at her through the glass again. She was lying down, but her eyes were open, staring at me. She smiled, revealing a row of yellow teeth. Terrified, I ran to the guard booth. He gave me coffee and, after listening with a pitying look, told me about the previous nurse. Pamela worked at the hospital for 6 months. She started out fine, but by the 3rd month, she was different. Said the patients moved, talked to her, asked her for impossible things, promised things. She kept coming. Until one day she killed a patient, smothered him with a pillow. When they found her, she was calm. She only said, "Mr. Guzman woke up and went home." She was my friend, the guard told me. She's in a mental institution now. I don't know why you want to keep this job, but whatever you do, don't talk to her. Don't listen to her. And never look back if you hear her walking behind you. I wanted to quit, but I needed the job so badly I promised myself I'd stay until the end of the month. I clung to my routine, my shifts, the other patients. On October 17th, I saw her walking again. I was cleaning up spilled IV fluid when her bed creaked. I turned. She was sitting, her head tilted, her mouth muttering something. I hurried to the desk. I heard her behind me. Then she spoke, her voice like dry leaves. "Why are you afraid, if you're alone too?" I covered my ears, started reciting my routine out loud just to drown her out. I walked to the desk, counting to 100 until the whispers faded. I only heard one thing. "Join me." Days went by. Almost hypnotized and less frightened, I began watching her more closely, studying her, understanding her. It wasn't rage in her eyes. It was longing, a deep desire. She didn't seem to want to hurt me. She wanted me to see her, to understand. And I started talking to her whenever I had the chance. Small things at first. "Good night. It's a sunny day." Then longer phrases. Sometimes I thought she answered. Not with words, but subtle changes in the room. Dimmer. Lights, a paler patient, a shadow moving down the hall. On October 24th, I saw her again. I noticed the pattern. She only woke on Mondays. She stood, lips moving, but no sound came out. I stood, crossed the ward, and entered the room. She looked at me with that expression of hers, part mother, part executioner. I approached. "What do you need?" I asked. She smiled. "Thank you," she replied. She turned and walked to a new patient's bed, a teenager who'd crashed his motorcycle 2 days ago. She pressed her hand into his chest. Didn't pierce it, just merged with him. The boy opened his eyes and stood up. "Where am I?" he asked, and walked out of the ward. I turned to look at his bed. The body was still there. Dead. No vital signs. Mrs. Esposito had returned to her bed almost instantly. She looked a bit more alive. After filling out the paperwork and explaining to the doctors how a supposedly stable patient had suddenly died, I was finally able to go home and rest. That night, I dreamed of her. In my dream, she looked younger, dressed in scarlet, walking to a table with 3 place settings. She served, me a plate in the center. "Join us," she said. The whole thing intrigued me more than it scared me. I researched her file. There was only one contact, her son. He lived far away, so that weekend I drove several hours to a small house on the outskirts of a nearby town. A young, handsome man answered. "Luis Esposito." I introduced myself, but he interrupted me. He seemed to be expecting my visit. "You're the new Pamela?" I went in, and after offering me a glass of water, he started talking about his mother. "She's a witch, and not figuratively, literally. My grandfather, her son, buried her in the garden after knocking her unconscious. She was cruel and sadistic. According to my grandfather, she and her mother, also a witch, were seeking a daughter. So when she got pregnant, they thought they'd succeeded. Something about a triple goddess, I heard once. But when she gave birth to a boy, their plans fell apart. She tried everything to have a daughter, but time was unkind. As the years passed, her mother gave up, embraced her humanity, and died. But not her. She wanted to extend her youth and fertility at any cost. Even forced my grandfather to, try to give her a daughter. Must have been hard for him. One day, under too much pressure, he smashed her head against the wall until she stopped moving. Buried her in the garden, as I mentioned. But she kept appearing. Whispers at night, the stench of smoke and rot, apparitions in dreams, shadows moving in empty rooms. Every day was a new torment. Over time, the manifestations lessened. By the time my grandfather had my father, she only showed up 4 days a week. "Wait, your grandfather's mother? How long has she been in a coma?" I asked. "She's been in that state for over 60 years. And how did she end up in the hospital?" "Because she didn't die, as you've seen. When my grandfather died, my father unearthed her, and her body was intact. Warm. No trace of worms. He tried, treating her well, thinking it would make it stop. But she killed my siblings, caused miscarriages. She was looking for her daughter. My father realized there was no way to contain her hunger, so he faked an accident and pushed her down the stairs. That's how she ended up in the hospital. Since then, we move her every so often. Her astral visits diminished with time. When I was a kid, I remember seeing her like a rotting corpse, staring at us through the living room window, licking the glass. The image still haunts my dreams. We believe the longer she remains in that state, the weaker she becomes. Until one day she finally dies. Honestly, it had been so long since I'd seen her that I was starting to forget about it. Until Pamela. And now you. And why do I see her in my dreams? Because you didn't run. Because you speak to her. Because you... Listen. Tomorrow is October 31st. Tell me, what are you going to do? Monday, October 31st. As soon as I was alone, I entered Mrs. Esposito's room. I sat beside her. She took my hand. Her skin was warm, full of life. "What do you want from me?" I asked. She smiled, sat up, put her mouth to my ear, and spoke of power, of words that open wounds in reality, names that burn in the bones, symbols, drawn in old blood, chants that make saints weep. She told me of temples buried in cities not yet born, of doors that turn inside mirrors, of dreams that bite. She showed me, without words, how souls can be emptied like cups, how a daughter can be born from the void, from hunger, from ancestral hatred. I saw myself transformed, stronger, freer, more me, and I accepted. Tuesday, November 1st, 10 patients dead, 1 nurse and 1 patient missing. Security footage shows Lucia Paz, night shift nurse at the Southern Hospital, leaving the building hand in hand with Mrs. Giulietta Esposito, who walked as if nothing were wrong. The eye. Footage captured her turning to the camera and smiling. When questioned, the guard said he heard screams that night coming from the coma ward, cries of pain from many people, and chants in a language he didn't understand. But when he looked through the window, he saw only darkness. When he entered, he found Lucia holding a scalpel, calmly cutting the last living patient, like a seamstress. Beside her stood Mrs. Esposito. The old woman whispered a word. The guard collapsed, mouth full of ashes. Friday, November 4th. Massacre at Luis Esposito's home. The house was invaded during the early morning. His body was found in fetal position, inside the oven. Signs of cannibalism and torture. He was in such a state he had to be identified by fingerprints and dental records. Curses were written on the walls in ashes. Mrs. Esposito is feeling much better. She eats ravenously and grows stronger every day. After helping her get up at the hospital and helping the other patients go home, I took her back to her old house where she finally made peace with her family. I'm so happy to help her. She's so wise and powerful. We prepared an altar with boiled bones from a family member, drew with the dried blood of forgotten saints. Each night we sit to read the names no one should utter anymore. She's taught me to see the world differently, with my eyes closed, from within, as if flesh were just a passing layer. She's promised. I'll become so powerful that people will obey with a whisper from my lips. To speak with the wind, read the stars, sing chants that make our will heard, summon familiars, and travel astrally. The time is near. She only asked one thing in return: a daughter, maiden, mother, crone. When I was about 11 or so, I and a friend of mine became obsessed with sneaking out of the house late at night. It was never on a school night, mind you. I wasn't a scoundrel, just a bored, restless tyke looking for adventure. Ricky and I would just pick a random rendezvous point in class every Friday afternoon. A convenience store, a spot in the woods, or even one another's house. The place changed, but the time was always the same. 2 a.m. Saturday morning. The time was strategically chosen. Late enough that our parents would be asleep, but early enough to get back home before they were awake. An added bonus for Ricky: was that I always brought along some soda since his parents were strictly against the consumption of sugary beverages, as he would often complain, mockingly quoting his mother. There was always one place I was hesitant to visit. Ricky suggested it every time, but I wouldn't even consider it, pleading for him to quit bringing it up. It was a waste of time. I was dead set against it. It was the old railroad bridge over Mill Creek where some teenage boy had hung himself. "I bet it's haunted," he would say. "I know." "You don't play around with that stuff. You never know what'll stick to you, what you'll bring home," I would advise. I thought it was sage advice and really believed it. I didn't believe in provoking the spirits. I didn't play with Ouija boards or spin around in front of a mirror insulting some long-dead witch just for kicks. Nope, leave them things be. But his persistence paid off. Against my better judgment, I finally agreed. I stealthily made my way out of the house that Saturday morning. In the movies, the protagonist always moves under the cover of thunder, masking unwanted sounds that could expose their whereabouts. I, on the other hand, had my dad snoring. The man was a blustering storm of snorts, gasps, and panting. My parents never heard the squeaking of the front door, or if they did, it was probably associated with my dad wheezing for air. I went to the backyard and got my bike. I rode down Limestone Road and then turned left onto the access road to the old rock quarry. Halfway down was a dirt path to the side meandering through the woods. It was difficult to see under the nighttime shade of the trees, but with a little concentration, I made my way without running off the path. When I reached the edge of the bridge, I saw Ricky's bike lying on the ground. He was standing at the middle of the bridge. Under the moonlight, I could see him waving me onward. As I started walking across the tracks, a new fear began to envelop me, a fear more attached to reality. The bridge hadn't been used in more than 50 years, its stability more than questionable at this point. The metal was rusted, but worse than that, the cross ties were rotted and loose. It was a steep fall to the water below. Falling in the creek during the day was one thing, but during the night was quite another. Nightmare scenarios flashed through my mind. I saw myself falling in the deep, dark water, and pulled under as I tried to swim to a shore by the boy who had hung himself. "Where's my soda?" Ricky asked as I carefully approached. "Crap, I forgot." "It's all right. Next time you owe me two." Ricky turned and looked down into the water. "I dare you to jump in." "No way, man," I responded. "Why, because that boy's down there?" The same nightmarish thoughts had burrowed through his head as well. We sat down and let our legs dangle. In time, the aura of fear dissipated. The cool night air and the sound of the gently flowing creek lulled us into a sense of tranquility. Then there was a loud screech from below, a sound unlike anything I had ever heard. Ricky and I jumped to our feet and ran toward our bikes. There was no talk. We concentrated on escape. This time, my journey across the bridge was swift, the fear of falling replaced by the fear of being caught. We hopped on our bikes and pushed through the forest, up the access road and out onto Limestone Road. We pedaled up the road a bit before we finally stopped, too tired to go any further. "What was that?" Ricky managed asked after gulping. "For air." "I don't know, but I think I want to be farther away." It was a hasty trek up Limestone Road to our neighborhood. We parted ways not soon after getting to our neighborhood. I was far from being late. My parents were dead to the world, sleeping without any worry that their boy was not anywhere else but safe in his bed. No, time was still on my side, but I was ready to be back home. I took a shortcut up Goodwin Road. It was a gravel road that ran alongside the railroad tracks. There used to be 5 or so houses opposite the railroad tracks. There was a boy named Timmy that used to live on there. Kids used to visit him just to feel his house shake as the train roared by. Now there were only 2 houses left, one at each end of the street. The house at the end where I entered the street was abandoned. The roof had caved in and most of the paint was peeling off. For some odd reason, the house looked to me like it had a face, a miserable, angry scowl with an open mouth and bulbous eyes. Most of the other houses were knocked down. The street had only one resident. That house at the other end of the street was well kept. It was quaint and lively, with pruned bushes and maple trees. It was somewhat spared the rigors of passing trains, since the tracks curved away from the house. It was the only house with a noticeable front yard. The other houses were simply road and a 2-foot-wide patch of grass. As I turned onto the road, I noticed a little bicycle next to the abandoned house, not lying on its side, but standing on its wheels with no noticeable kickstand. I was convinced that the moonlight was playing tricks on me and that surely the bicycle was leaning up against the house. Then the bicycle started to roll. I waited for it to fall over. I expected it to fall over, but it didn't happen. The little bicycle kept rolling towards me. For a second time that night, I was fleeing for my life. I pushed against the pedals, like I was stomping a snake, hoping to accelerate my bike to warp speed and well on my way home. I got to the end of the street and turned left onto the adjoining street, crossed the curving railroad tracks, and stopped. As strange as it sounds, I was curious as to where the bicycle was going. I turned around, half expecting to see nothing, convinced that it was an illusion, an aftermath of adrenaline I had experienced on the bridge. Yet, there it was, slowly making its way up the street. It rolled with careful precision, avoiding rocks and potholes, its spectral operator seemingly well acquainted with the road it was traversing. When it passed under the lone streetlight, I noticed that the little bicycle was pink with long tassels hanging off the handlebars. It rolled into the well-manicured yard up to the front porch and fell on its side. I called Ricky on Sunday and told him what I had seen. He didn't believe me, but was willing to check it out not next Saturday, but the Saturday after that. He had to go out of town next week and spend the night at his grandmother's. When the Saturday after next rolled around, I almost decided not to go, but Ricky's skepticism convinced me otherwise. I wanted him to see it, but I also didn't want to see it for myself. I felt like I was tempting the spirits. I didn't want whatever was on that bicycle following me home. This time I decided we should camp down by the tracks near the abandoned house. If the bicycle was still there and started to move, then we would follow it. If it wasn't there, we could explore the abandoned house. Maybe the owner of the other house had tossed it in a landfill and we would never see it again. Yet, when we got there, the little pink bicycle was right next to the house, upright and ready to roll. Dude, it's leaning against the house. Your eyes are playing tricks on you, exclaimed Ricky. Just wait. As soon as I spoke, the little bicycle started rolling out of the yard. Ricky was ready to head the other way, away from the bicycle, but I grabbed him by his shirt and motioned that we should follow it. His eyes grew wide with disbelief. Are you kidding me? The question startled me. Was I kidding myself? Where had this courage come from? I felt at ease that this wasn't an evil entity, that it was probably a little girl, that she was lost or looking for something. I was ready to find out. We followed at a good distance, not riding, but walking our bikes. When it got to the middle of the street, the little bicycle stopped. We stopped and waited. It didn't move. It was as if it knew it was being followed, and it did not like it. After what seemed like an hour, the little bicycle began to move again, went to the front porch, and fell over like before. We watched this play out for 2 more weeks. The same path, from the same beginning to the same end. We were perplexed. We wondered what happened when the owner of the house came out and seen a little pink bicycle in his yard day after day, or did he? Maybe the little bicycle made its way back to the abandoned house sometime after it fell over. We had to find out, so we decided to skip the nightly escapade and come a little bit later one Saturday morning and see where the bicycle was then. We figured around 6 in the morning would be perfect. The next Saturday came, and lying near the front porch was the little pink bicycle. It hadn't moved from that spot since the previous night. Then how does it get back to its house? Asked. Ricky, an elderly man dressed in overalls, barreled out the front door of the house. He snatched up the bike and threw it in the back of a truck. We could hear him cussing from across the street. He turned his head and saw us camped out near the railroad tracks. He surmised that we were the responsible party, seeing that we were staked out, observing his hilarious reactions. "You little shits think this is funny, do you?" he yelled. "You won't let me have any peace." He sauntered across the street and grabbed me by the collar. "What's your problem?" "I don't have any problem, sir. Why do you keep putting that little girl's bike in my yard night after night?" "I don't know what you're talking about, mister." I lied, of course, but I didn't know how to explain it. I didn't kill her. It was an accident. My boy paid for it. He paid for it on that bridge. Damn it, he paid for it. He paid for it. Leave me alone. The man started bawling and fell to his knees. He reeked of alcohol and body odor. The disheveled man was steeped in misery, never looking up to notice that we had moved on. On our way back to my house, we discussed what we had heard. That was his boy that hung himself on the bridge, explained Ricky. His boy must have somehow killed some kid. A little girl. I didn't kill her. That statement kept running through my head. But why did he say he didn't kill her? I asked. I don't know, answered Ricky. I think I do. That old man needs to see how that bicycle gets to his front porch every night. We formulated a plan. Yet another Saturday near the railroad tracks. The variety of our adventures had narrowed, but I wouldn't call it mundane. It was the Saturday of all Saturdays. The last Saturday of our nightly adventures. The Saturday I will never forget. There was a threat of storms. The spirit was parading through its ritualistic pilgrimage, doling out punishment for the unlucky penitent, rolling along on tiny, torturous wheels. The old man bared no cross. He carried a little pink bicycle. As soon as it crossed under the street lamp, we ran up the front porch stairs and started ringing the doorbell and banging on the door, yelling and screaming nonsense. Anything that would provoke the dead to awaken. We caused such a commotion that we were sure the old man would come out and shoot us or call the police, but we had to take a chance. The porch light came on. The door slammed open. The old man stormed out in nothing but a pair of underwear and a white tank top. What in the hell is going on? The old man shoved Ricky into the front porch swing. Thunder exploded. A train horn blared in the distance. Look, mister, I pointed towards the bike. What are you yapping about? I'm calling the police, but not before I tan your hides. Look down there, you stupid old bastard. The old man cut his eyes at me, surprised at my boldness. He gingerly made his way down the stairs and stood out in the yard. Rain poured down, slanting with the brutal wind. The little pink bicycle wavered but never fell. It moved forward, directly toward the old man, deviating a bit from its usual path. He backed up, his arms and legs shaking with fright. The ground began to shake. The old man cried aloud, blustering about something. He was difficult to hear with the storm and the approaching train. Forgive me! Forgive me! I heard through the brief respite in the storm. Thunder and horn blared again. The rain picked up, the ground shook. The old man turned and ran towards the track. He paused, looked back, and then dove in front of the train. His body was thrown a good distance in front of the train. A glare of shadow momentarily blocking the engine's headlight was the only indication that the man had not yet been run over. The train brakes squealed, but the train kept on moving. By now, the old man was mincemeat. It rolled and rolled forever, murdering and erasing the old man from existence. Finally, mercilessly, with a deadening finality, the train stopped. The tracks shook and the rain stopped. We didn't stick around for the police. We had nothing to explain. The old man committed suicide. No one saw us. We didn't cause it, or at least that's what I told myself. I wanted confession, not suicide. My expectation was far less macabre. It was a lesson learned, a lesson I had already anticipated, something I had already known. Never tempt the spirits. Some months later, on a Saturday, of course a Saturday, I woke up to find lying in my front yard a little pink bicycle. I didn't see it as threatening. No, I think it was a thank you. Thank you for justice. I hope at least. I hope it's not my cross to bear for what I did. If it is, then, oh well. Some 30 years on, I've kept it. My wife thinks it strange, my obsession with this little pink bicycle, but I keep it because I don't want her to be lonely. I hope she's moved on. I hope those little wheels don't ever start turning again. Thanks for diving into this story with me. Don't miss out on the next one. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a big thumbs up, and drop a comment below with your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think.